Well, hi folks, welcome to the channel and thanks for joining me. So today we're going to have a look at this mega rare personal stereo from Audio Sonic, and it's the CT-109. Now I say mega rare, I've not seen one before or since I had this one in. I got it as part of a consignment actually with some other personal stereos, so do check out my other videos on the repairs and restoration of those. But I didn't really know anything about this model and I can't find anything at all on the internet, as it were. I can't find much at all about Audio Sonic as a brand, and these do seem to be particularly rare examples. Now this one was made in Japan, and I can only imagine it would have been in the 1980s or somewhere around there at least. Now I haven't tried it yet. It looks really nice. It's a cool looking unit, to be fair. So it's only got 3 transport buttons: stop, fast forward and play. The volume is a slider mechanism just there, and that's about it. There's no radio on this one. 1 headphone jack and 1 DC in, and that is a DC 6 volts, and I'm just checking on there, that is a positive pin, so we'll just need to bear that in mind. But first thing I want to do is check the batteries on it and see if it works. You'll notice it comes with its original strap there, which is in really lovely condition, and I think it would be nice not just to get this working, but to actually sort of polish it up and see if we can give it a fairly sensible restoration as well. Now you can see that it's pretty badly sort of scuffed and worn, obviously been well used and well loved over the years, but the good news is that looks like it's self-coloured plastic and not painted, and if that's the case then we'll be able to cut it back a bit with some decent polish, and we won't get it brand new, but we'll do a darn good job of cleaning it right up. So as I say, I don't know if it works at all. I think the first thing we'll do is probably just get some batteries in. We can always plug it in through the DC in a second, but might as well see if the batteries work first. Let's get this cover off. First inspection tends to suggest that the terminals are pretty clean, so that looks good. Obviously we'll give them a decent clean at some point anyways, but for now we'll just get these in. As I say, 6 volts, so 4 batteries there, and hopefully we'll get some sort of sense out of this. So first things first, it's a manual lid, by the way, and the eject will work via a lever on the actual cassette tape, I would imagine, if at all. So play, and yep, it's turning, which is great news. All right, so before we go ahead and check the DC, which we will do in a bit, I'm going to put a tape in, and I've got an old cassette here actually, which I don't mind if it gets chewed up or anything like that. So let's just see how this goes in. There we go. Okay, we'll press play. Now what I'm going to do is I've got some trusty little JSX 37s here, which are Sanyo speakers that I use for little bench testing and stuff. So if we just separate them out, I'll be able to hear whether or not they're working okay. So okay, we've got something. It sounds like one of the channels might not be working though. Okay, and volume up. Okay, so it sounds like one of the channels is not working very well. Now that particular tape is a weird little tape, which I don't mind ruining really, to be honest. It's got bird song and odd things like that on it. This one is another sacrificial one. So I know now that this won't get chewed up because we've just played the other one successfully. So we'll try this because it's actually got music on it, I think. Okay, so we've got that channel, but we're missing the other channel. So okay, I'm just working the volume slider, and I'm just getting crackle through there. It's almost like I'm getting static, and I'm not actually getting anything in the way of music through it. So is that the jack? So let's have a listen just to see whether or not it might be the jack now. So we're just going to put it to moderate volume, and I just put it to my ear then, and I could tell that one channel was working okay, the other channel wasn't, but it wasn't related to the volume slider. It seemed to be more to do with the headphone out, and it was sort of working at certain points and not on others. So it would tend to suggest, I would imagine, it's probably a dry joint on the headphone jack. The belt seems okay, to be fair. So I think what we'll do is we'll get it open, have a look at it, and check the condition of the belt. Also check the board, see if we can actually perhaps reflow the headphone jack. That might be a good shout. But I think first of all, just as a belt and braces, before we go in and see what else we need to check, I am just going to check the DC in, just to make sure that in fact that is working okay, before we go in and then address anything on the other side. So I'm just going to check the voltage first, and we were looking for 6-volt positive tip on this one, so I will literally just check that, because I never quite trust these multi-voltage adapters to give us what we want. So let's have a look. Yeah, 5 3/4 volts, I'll take that. And again, that's a positive pin, which is what we want. So always best to double check that first. Last thing you want to do is blow anything inside whilst we're trying to fix it. Let's plug that in then and triple check that it is definitely positive pin, which it is. And so I'm going to take some batteries out. Just a couple will do for a minute, just to prove it's the it is actually the power lead doing that. And yeah, that's working. Good. No, that's fine. Okay, righty ho then. Well, first things first, I think we'll just unplug everything and crack it open. Right, well, there are 2 obvious screws on the front plate. Okay, long one there. Right, what else? You can see a couple of screws just inside here, 1, 2. So I think just got to be super careful now. I think it's one of these. Right, very carefully. There we go. That's it. Don't want to break that. That's the last thing we want to do. Also, though, removing that gives us the ability to A, polish this, which is great for later, but B, allows us superb access to get to the head and the capstan and the pinch wheel, which don't look too bad. Yeah, they really don't look in too bad a condition, to be fair. You can see the stereo head there. Anyway, I assume these are the 2 screws that we need to get out next. So 1, 2, so they are the same. Right, is that what we need to get off? Let's see. Yeah, there's a tab just there, so I imagine that's it. That pulls away. Right, okay, so we've got the back case. I'll just zoom out a touch. So we've got the back case there, which is attached still via the battery terminals. And then this one, what else have we got? It's probably held in. Actually, let's have a look. Ah, there you go. Just the spindle was just locked in there, so we can get rid of that one as well. Good stuff. So we can give that a superb little separate clean and polish as well. That's lovely. Right, next job then. Here's the mech. There's your little motor. Okay, no speed adjustment to see there, but you can see now a little bit of ferrite build up on the pinch roller. Not too bad though, it's not deformed or anything like that, so cleaning that's going to be a piece of cake in a while. Okay, so we said the headphone jack is a little bit shonky there, didn't we? We said that might be the issue. Hard to tell, but I've got a feeling that might actually need to be reflowed actually. So it might just be some wear and tear on that solder joint, because as I say, it does work, and you find that an awful lot on personal stereos, especially on the headphone jacks. You find that what happens is it works when you first plug it in, and as the pressure of the actual jack going in distorts it enough to actually push the fracture open. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if it's something to do with that particular pad there. So we'll reflow that in a minute. Okay, so we've got a screw here for mounting the board. Right, there we go. Right, now got the cable for the head. It's tucked away inside there. Let's see how landlocked this is now, whether we can turn everything over. Just want to see what we can get to. Well, there we go. Right, so I'll bring the camera in so we can have a closer look at the board. There's a great deal going on there. That all looks in fairly decent condition, I've got to say, which seems to be borne out by the fact it does appear to be playing okay. But we do need to look at that volume. So I think we'll tidy that. We'll clean the volume switch, I think, reflow the headphone jack mounting point. We'll change the belt whilst we're here, and you can see the trim pot for the motor just there, so we'll adjust the motor speed if we need to in a little minute. Okay, and there's actually two belts, if you notice. So we've got the main drive belt there for the from the motor, and there's a secondary belt there, possibly for the auto stop, or maybe driving the fast forward gears. But let's take a closer look at that, and I think we'll change those now. Okay, let's take a look at these belts then. So the first one, main drive belt, it's not in desperately bad condition. Obviously it's got a bit of a teardrop there, which is what we would have expected, where it's been sat for a long time over that motor pulley. So we'll replace that anyway, because that would cause wow and flutter issues. Plus also it does feel a bit dry, and so does need to come out. This particular one, yep, yeah, you can just see how it's a bit chewed up now. Look, a bit gnarled up, dry, frayed. Yeah, not in the best condition at all. And that one is actually just a different size. If I just overlay the two there, this one is slightly bigger on the top. So I'll find a couple of belts that match. And also, incidentally, this one has also gone a bit teardroppy as well. So anyways, I'll go and find a pair of replacements for those, and I'll just run some isopropyl alcohol around the actual belt running surfaces on the pulleys as well, and just give the whole thing a bit of a zhuzh, and maybe even, no, I was going to say a drop of oil on the motor spindle, but actually, to be fair, A, it was running perfectly well, and B, you can't really get in there to oil it anyway. So I think on this occasion we won't do that step. So I'm just going to clean the pulleys, and all I'm using here is a cocktail stick with a bit of cloth and some alcohol, and you could use a piece of alcohol impregnated string or whatever you wanted to on these, but I'm just going to do this one. Also the bearing surfaces for the belt on the underside of the pulley as well, and I'll be back in a moment. And just before I put the belts on, just going to clean the head as well. It's actually in really nice condition. I'll just zoom in, and you can see that it's pretty clean. The whole mechanism itself actually is pretty good. I don't think it's ever been apart really. because there's just that mild patina, there's just that amount of ferrite look on the capstan, and you can see the washer is still nicely in place there. Nobody's lost that. So I dare say the flywheel has never been out. Incidentally, on that point, you could take it out now, the flywheel, and actually oil it and everything, but you can see it spinning really nicely. It's not gunked up or anything like that, so I'm just going to leave that alone for today and just get on and clean in here. Actually not too bad at all, really, considering, and the rubber feels really supple and sort of soft as well, which is fantastic. So that'll run just nicely. Okay, so we've got the new belts ready, same size really, just without the teardrops. They'll be marginally smaller and back as per the original sizes. So all that remains now is to fit them back over here if we can. So it was the smaller one that ran from under the pulley and onto there, like so. And then the larger of the two is the main drive belt. So again, and there we go. So yep, just enough tension in there, not too much load on the motor, but that should, you can see everything is driving off of there, and if we were to turn the motor, you can see everything spinning around. So that's great, I'm happy with that. So I think there's a couple of jobs to do then. One is to clean the volume slider, and the other one is to reflow that headphone jack just there on the board. So we'll up there, sorry. So we'll get on and do that now, and then we should be able to just polish up the case and reassemble it. Okay, so here is the slider for the volume. So I'm just going to put a tiny little amount of contact cleaner in, because it did feel a little bit scratchy on its way, but also a tiny bit of lube on there as well, just a smidge, just to help it on its way, and work that a few times, and we'll let that dry. Just gently slide that back and forth. There we go. Good stuff. Okay, I'm just going to reflow this headphone jack. And hopefully that's all that required. I was actually all set to desolder the battery terminals as well, just so that I've got free access to polish the case and everything without worrying about pulling the wires off. But first I thought I might just check this headphone jack. Now I have tucked all the leads back. The head lead has now been tucked back into its cutouts in the board, so that's out of the way now. So what I'm just going to do is put my 6 volts DC back in. I'm going to plug the headphones back into or the speakers at least, into the board there, and we'll put a tape in and see if we can get a sound out of it. So here we go. Play is
low from eye level. And now to a new 3-piece from New York. It's the Coma Teens. It's a track called Get Off My Case. And it's from their debut LP, Pictures.
That's still not working. I've got to say the volume's working a treat now though, but we still haven't got sound. Yeah, that volume's working beautifully after that clean and lube, but we still haven't got one of our speakers working right yet. At least we know it's definitely not the volume pot. Okay, well when I reflowed that joint, it still didn't really help us use very much, so I reverted to just using a cheap old pair of headphones here, and listening, because then you can hear better about what's going on. And I've just whipped out all the solder from there, and weirdly it sounds better now and plays better now, would you believe, without any solder in there at all, really. I'll just show you actually whilst I'm here. So if I press play, got that one and that one. So both the speakers are working perfectly now, and it seemed like the more solder that I whipped out, the better. So I'm wondering if perhaps there was maybe a short circuit there somewhere, or maybe a couple of the contacts were just slightly too close or something. So I'm just going to clean that up now and then resolder it, and hopefully we should be okay. Right, well, that's the headphone working really nicely now, but what I'm going to do is just unpick the battery terminals from the board, for the simple reason I'm going to polish up the casing now. There we go. Going to polish up the casing, and now that's completely separate. Now you could argue that it might be easier to just unplug or desolder them there, but actually it can be quite tricky sometimes to get the original connections back on with the solder for fear of melting or damaging the casing. And also they can be fairly tight when they're factory fitted. They're quite tight to fit into the casings and stuff, and if you start resoldering on at different angles, they can be a bit of a pain to put that together. And for what I need to do, which is basically to polish this back surface, all I need is access to be able to move it around a bit to polish it. So I'm quite happy to leave those two tails on the casing. Okay, now time to polish the case. I'm just going to get rid of the shielding there, so we'll just put that to one side for a moment. So yeah, you can see it's pretty scuffed and tired. It's got potential, nothing's broken, nothing's chipped or cracked or anything like that, and there are some deep scratches in there which will probably end up leaving traces of, but ultimately I reckon we can polish out a lot of this. So I'm just going to use some car cutting compound here. I find this is really useful for getting scratches out of self-coloured plastic, so perfectly safe to use. But do check yourself whatever you're cleaning, because make sure you don't get any ink. Let me just give you an example. I'll be super careful on the top face. I'll polish up various parts of it, of course, but you will polish off the ink. So it might sound obvious, but don't go crazy, yeah? So just make sure you give these a wide berth, maybe masking tape or whatever you need. Just be careful. But if it's just plain plastic, cutting compound should be safe. Just make sure it's not painted. If it's larger pieces, of course, you can use automated like buffing machines, buffing wheels on drills and stuff like that. But for today, just going to be careful, do it by hand. It shouldn't take too long. So I've cut it down with some compound. I've also washed them all through with soapy water as well to get into all the nooks and crannies. Next job, a little bit of car polish. And just like before with the cutting compound, we don't need a great deal at all. This will literally be enough just to work this in, and we'll work that in and let it dry to a bit of a haze and buff it all up in a moment. So I've just put some car polish on everything really, including the cassette door, because that's front printed, so I can't really cut that with any sense, so I'll scratch all the paint off. But you'll see straight away how beautifully this is starting to come up now. So all that remains is to start getting this back together, then we'll give it a final test. So just a quick recap before we put it back together. I've put the board back onto the cassette mech now. We've cleaned the head and the capstan and pinch roller, so that's all good. We've resoldered the headphone jack and that now works. Put the cables back from whence they came. Replaced both of the belts. There's the old ones just there. I've also just cleaned the battery terminals. You can see them gleaming now. And given everything basically a bit of a cut and a polish, ready to put back together again. So hopefully this shouldn't take too long, and we'll be back in business and ready to test it. Okay, now it's time to put it all back together again. So First is the shielding, that can go just into there. And then just checking that the head cable is out of the way of the mechanism, which it is. You can drop that one into place. I can't remember the exact wiring for the battery cables out, but I would be surprised if they go in the battery compartment. It's just a tight squeeze with the casing on the side, but I think that looks neat and tidy enough. So hopefully we put the casing on like so and screw that into position. And I'm just going to test it real quick. Yep, that's working perfectly. So now I've got the confidence to just button it down, put the the cassette door lid on, which can be a little bit tricky. And that's basically going to drop in like so. Just making sure the engagements are in the right place and that the actual spring is in the correct place as well. Okay, we're very nearly there now, so all that remains is just to drop a tape in just to see if it works. I'll put some power in and also the speakers. Press play. Perfect, they're both working. And fast forward. Beautiful. So all that remains then is to give it a final polish up and do a final reveal. So here it is then, the CT-109 from Audio Sonic. Quite a rare beast, I have to say. I wasn't familiar with this model at all. It arrived as part of a consignment a while ago with some other personal stereos that I've restored on the channel, so do check those out. But I didn't really know anything about this particular model, and all I did know about this one really was that it was tired, it was quite scruffy. It'd obviously been well used and loved, you know, it was quite scratched and worn, especially on the back. But I've polished that up now, also cleaned the battery contact. I've got it running from the batteries and indeed from the DC socket, but it wasn't playing its best. The old belts are here, so they were a bit teardrop shaped and a bit forlorn, so they've both been replaced now, which is fantastic. The head's been cleaned, the capstan and the pinch roller have been cleaned, but there was still something odd about it. One of the channels was down. In fact, it was the right hand channel wasn't playing. The volume pot was quite scratchy as well, so we cleaned and lubricated that, but that didn't fix the issue. Turned out there was a dry joint on the board where the headphone jack actually attaches, so we've cleaned up the solder on that. So just wicked out the old solder there. There's the old wick, and just really put new solder in and sorted that out. So that's fantastic news. As I say, just a bit of cleaning. So there's the consumables that we used really, and that was pretty much all we needed. So just needed some TLC and some general maintenance, and now it's good to go. So I've just hooked up some Seisho booster little speakers, little two-way personal stereo speakers here, and I thought we'd just give it a blast now. So if all is well, A, it will play well after batteries, B, it will play in stereo because the headphone jack has been repaired, C, the volume shouldn't give us any issues because we've cleaned the pot, and hopefully there shouldn't be any warbling, which will be our D, because we've replaced the belts. So fingers crossed, here we go. Incidentally, any crackling we may get is from the dry joints actually on these speakers. It's the first time I've actually tried these, not been used in a number of years, so that's all that will be.
Holding hands by candlelight, cab home, dress on the stairs, French kiss in the heat of the night. You may take me for granted, do what you wanna do,
don't worry, 'cause that sun's coming down. And I'm not with you. And there it is, the CT-109 from Audio Sonic. Thanks very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do check out the rest of the channel, see my boombox, personal stereo and 8-track repair videos. In the meantime, stay safe and I'll be back soon. Bye bye for now.